Welcome to the Growth Minded Accountant podcast, where our experts will share best practices on running your firm in the digital age. This podcast is brought to you by CountingWorks Pro. Let's get started.
Thank you for joining me today. My name is Lee Reams with CountyWorks Pro. And today's podcast on the Growth Minded Accountant, we're going to talk about building thought leadership, how to build a strong position, what has changed. I think this is an important topic for our tax and accounting space, especially the independent professionals. A lot of stuff has changed. The pandemic has, I would say, changed it very quickly, very rapidly, and the way to market has changed dramatically in the last couple of years. So today we are welcome Nicky Billou. He's the host of the Thought Leader Revolution podcast and is an expert in helping professionals, service professionals, specifically become branded thought leaders and scale their practices into millions of dollars, basically. So, Nicky, if you could introduce yourself, kind of get us started, and then I'll jump in with some questions and we'll kind of go from there.
Lee, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's an honor to be here, man. And let me start by way of telling you a bit about myself and my backstory. So I'm originally a Christian immigrant from Iran to Toronto, Canada. And back in the late 70s, the Islamic Revolution happened. And my late father, God rest his soul, could see the writing on the wall. He could see that raising kids under a tyranny, a theocratic tyranny that was opposed to Christians wasn't going to be the greatest thing for his family. So he decided at that point in time, we need to hightail it to the West. So we ended up being in Canada. And every day I thank God that my father had the foresight to do that. Because, you know, we're really big believers in freedom and free expression and in free enterprise. And it was my father's foresight that allowed us to live in freedom and do what we do. And one of the things I say every time I get on every show is there's a lot of people these days that like to badmouth the West, like to badmouth America and say, oh no, this is such a terrible place. People are so racist, sexist, blah, 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 blah. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. This is the most tolerant, greatest place on earth. Period, full stop, end of story. When I was 11 years old in Iran, someone threw a Molotov cocktail with a note attached to it that said, die Ashuri Christian scum. Okay. Basically, if not for the grace of God, that thing would have exploded and you and I would not be having this conversation. Nothing like that has ever happened to me or anyone that I know of here in the free West, in America. So I think everybody should be grateful that they get to live in the greatest, freest nation in the world. So I want to say that because freedom is what gives us as entrepreneurs the opportunity to make our dreams and our visions come true. And my late father, he was an entrepreneur and he's the greatest man I've ever known. My late father was a man who believed in uplifting people. He was a man who believed that God put him here on this earth to do good for people, to give them a hand up. And Dad took so many people out of poverty, gave them a chance to like grow a business, like hundreds. People still today come to me and go, your father, Nicky, I mean, he did this for me. My dad would give people houses, apartments, and cars. And Lee, you heard that right. He gave people houses, apartments, and cars. Now you might be thinking to yourself, why would he do that? Well, first of all, he was a Christian and he believed that it was his duty to give to people. But secondly, he did it because he could. He had the wherewithal. He had the financial means to be able to be generous. So I thought to myself, man, entrepreneurs are the greatest people in the world. They're like my dad. I want to be just like my dad. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to do for people what my dad does for people. And so I became an entrepreneur. And then I realized there's a lot of people that are entrepreneurs out there that are good people. They got good hearts, but they don't know how to run a business. They're afraid of selling, as an example. Selling makes them think, I don't want to be pushy. I don't want to be salesy. I don't want to come across like I have commission breath. So I'm going to back off. Here's a problem with them doing that. One is they don't get business. That means that their business doesn't grow. They don't get to serve their families. They don't get to fulfill their purpose. They don't get to, like, let's face it, use that money to do good things for themselves, right? Secondly, that person that they could have helped doesn't get their help. Lee, that's a terrible thing. Why would you not want people who could use your help to get your help? Well, of course you wouldn't, but you don't ask for the help because you're scared and you don't get the business. Thirdly, a charlatan marketer, a sizzle seller, somebody who is unscrupulous and doesn't give a good gosh darn about these people. That person goes and gets the business, but they don't care about delivering. So, the person who bought from them doesn't get their problem solved. And the sum total of goodness in the world comes down by just a little bit, right? And so my goal, man, is I want to teach good entrepreneurs, heart-driven entrepreneurs, to reframe selling to serving. I know nobody wants to sell, but everybody wants to serve. Everybody wants to be a caring advocate. And if we help people do that, they're going to win. Now, for them to be successful at that, well, they got to do a few things. Number one is they can't look and sound like everybody else, right? You talked about thought leadership. What's the difference between an expert and a thought leader? When an expert is someone who knows something, a thought leader is someone who's known for knowing something. So experts are a dime a dozen. Thought leaders are rare and valuable, right? So we help people really dial in their message and be seen as the go-to authority in their space, right? And by doing that, beautiful things happen. First of all, the person who's a thought leader gets to choose what they do, who they do it with, how often they do it. They get to build a practice of their dreams. They get to make big impact and big income. And they get to have big influence on the world around them. So impact, influence, income, I to the power of 3. That's what it's all about. So for me, I'll tell you a story. This is a really brilliant story. You're going to love this story. Okay. I had a young man who was a personal trainer. You know how much money personal trainers make, right? This kid made $25 an hour and he had 7 clients and he had to bus it everywhere to get to his clients' league. Bus it everywhere. So he met us and I said, look, dude, you right now, who do you work with? He goes, oh, I'll work with anybody. And I said, anybody with a wallet and a pulse? He goes, yeah, pretty much. I said, no. You need to niche down. So he said, okay, I'll niche down. So we helped him niche down. And first he said, I'll work with doctors because he thought they had money. Well, doctors didn't really need them. So it didn't really work out too well. Then he goes, okay, I'll work with cardiologists. I'll be more narrow. Cardiologists didn't really care to work with him either. Then finally, he started working with a guy who was a Paralympian. He had a missing limb. He had a missing leg from a childhood accident. And he loved it. He said, you know what? I want to work with people with missing limbs. Now, buddy, in 6 weeks, he got 400 clients. 6 weeks, 400 clients. Now, why is that? Well, he finally hit the right niche, obviously. And his message to these people was, I'm going to give you the best workout of your life. But his message was deeper than that. His message was, hey, just because you got a missing limb doesn't mean you're any less good than anybody else. You can have a full workout just like anybody else. And what do people who have missing limbs presumably have? I mean, I don't know for sure, but I mean, I'm thinking a lot of these people probably, they have some regret over not having that limb. They might feel bad about it. They might question themselves, am I as good as anybody else? I'm half a man, quarter of a woman, whatever the heck it is that's going through their heads. This kid's message to these people is, you are just as good as anybody else. You are awesome. You're amazing. And they just ate it up. Lee, his business exploded from 18,000 a year to 180,000 a year overnight, like that. That's the power of being a brand and thought leader. And it was very gratifying for us to be a part of this young man's success. But what was even more gratifying is that 400 people with missing limbs got to work out, be energized, got to feel good about themselves in ways maybe they hadn't for years, man. And that was a beautiful thing.
All right, we're coming out hot. So I love it. I didn't even have to get into some of the things. There's a lot to unpack on what you just went through. I appreciate the background. I love that story. And I think I'll just add to that. Anyone who's traveled around the world knows how, when you come back, you realize how lucky you have it. I've been to Egypt, I've been to Tanzania, I've been to Kenya, South America. There's a lot of places that the world is very different, and you can respect how lucky we have it here in the US. So let's go back to the purpose of today and the story you just gave about the trainer going from being what I'm going to call a general. So I'm going to start relating this to the tax and accounting space. What we find is a lot of our professionals get in that generalist mindset where, like your personal trainer, they just said, okay, I'm going to pick up any client, any type of client. I'm not going to focus. I had 7, I'm charging very little dollars. And I'm thinking that's the way to build my business. The reality is that by focusing, by niching down and finding your narrative. So you basically change the script for him, that person now has a story, and it's a story that his prospects bought into. and emotionally bought into. And because of that, I'm sure the demand was off the charts. I'm sure as far as price points go, not to take advantage of clients, but you can get a premium pricing. So what we try to teach our clients, the same, I mean, you couldn't have said it any better, is understanding the power of being that thought leader, being that expert. So, a lot of times we'll have a CPA who's competing with another CPA firm, and that other CPA firm is getting business at a premium price. And they're going, why is that? And you look at it and you start unpacking what they're doing. And it is because they have focus on a certain area. And the perception from the buyer, there's a perceived value there that they will pay a premium price. So that being said, and I basically just kind of jumped on what you said. Why is it that accountants specifically, and I'm talking about enrolled agents, CPAs, who I'm speaking to in my audience, they're so risk adverse. They're so into doing the same way they did it last year, the same way they did it the year before, that they're not willing to take these leaps. So how would you kind of walk through that scenario, the same type of example you gave for one of my, someone in my audience?
Well, the first thing I do when I have a conversation with somebody is I'm all about solving acute problems for people. That's effectively all business is. It's about solving acute problems for a profit, right? So if I'm going to sit in front of somebody, be they an accountant, be they a fitness trainer, be they a corporate consultant, I want to understand their pain point. And I'm a specialist. I solve certain pain points. I don't solve all pain points. You with me? So the pain points I solve a pain point called not making enough money really, 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 really well. So if someone has been an accountant and after all said and done, they're working 60 hours a week and they're maybe making $10,000 a month in profit on a good month, right? And they're like, damn, that fellow over there, he's working 30 hours a week and he's making $100,000 in profit in a bad month, and that guy's going, how do I turn that around? The first thing I want to do is I want to make sure that this individual sitting in front of me is serious about solving his or her problem. Okay. I'll tell you a story. So there was a man down south who lived in a lovely property on some acreage, and he had an old-fashioned front porch, right? Like a wooden front porch, and he had a rocking chair there, and there was a dog there sitting down next to him while he was rocking on his chair, and the dog was just whining, and his best friend came to visit him, and they started chatting, and his best friend just noticed his dog's whining, and he finally couldn't take it anymore. It was driving him crazy, and he said, how come your dog's whining so much? Can't you shut him up? And he said, well, he's whining because he's sitting on a nail. And he said, sitting on a nail? Why the heck doesn't he get off that nail? And he said, oh, well, it ain't hurting him enough yet. And if the person in front of me, it's not hurting him enough yet, there's nothing I'm going to tell him. Candidly, my job inside of any conversation, any interaction, is to help the person in front of me see how bad what they're dealing with is actually hurting them. How bad does it hurt you to work 60 hours a week? How bad does it hurt you to make so little money, right, from working 60 hours a week? How bad does it hurt you to know that that fellow over there is working 30 hours a week and making $100,000 a month on a bad month, even though in school you kicked his ass in classes, but now he's kicking your ass in there? How bad does it hurt you when you don't get to spend time with your wife when you go home at night and your wife's a little annoyed with you? How bad does it hurt you that you don't have a relationship with your teenage children because you feel bad about yourself and you don't know how to deal with them? I want to get deep into that pain. See, that's a little wound that they have there, and I'm going to open that wound and I'm going to just salt it. So they feel that pain and they feel it. And when I'm clear that that person in front of me is really feeling that pain, and that becomes obvious in the conversation, it's uncomfortable. They're like, oh my God. There's an aha moment. There's a clicking. You feel it, right? That's when I'll have a conversation with them about what they need to do. Before that, I'll go, listen, you obviously are happy living a mediocre life. Keep living a mediocre life. That's what you want. I feel bad for you. I mean, my heart breaks for you, but I'm not going to help somebody who's not ready to help themselves. I can't want someone's success, someone living the best version of their life more than they want it themselves. But when I'm on a phone call or on a Zoom call like this, Lee, I give them everything. I go after that pain point with everything I got, because I'm an advocate. It's my job to make sure that this person is in a position to make a good decision. And a good decision is, I'm ready to solve this today. Not, you know what, I think I want to keep suffering. I want to keep working 60 hours a week. I want to keep making $10,000 a month on my good months. That's not a good decision. That's a crappy decision.
Yeah. And so I think more this year than in the past, have heard a lot of feedback from, the smaller firms who are literally working 80 hours and, they have no work life and they're struggling to get the work done. There's very little love for it. And what we try to say is, okay, step back, narrow your focus, position yourself, figure out a way to get systems in place that do a lot of the selling for you. And that's part of what building thought leadership is all about. So I want to understand, all right, you got me. All right, you're right. My life isn't great. I am, coming home, my wife, my family, my kids don't even want to talk to me. I'm in a bad mood. I'm unhealthy, even worse, from the food I'm eating, I'm not exercising enough, my mind, my body, it all connects. So I'm ready to go. So I'm now talking to you, Nicky. I'm saying, okay, well, what do I do? Because again, as an accountant, I'm trained to be risk averse. I'm about keeping things under control, making it very, systematic where I know where things are going and there's not much risk factors, I think, in making decisions. So I'm now ready to buy into your program or what you're preaching. So how do I now become a thought leader? Like, is this a process where you're teaching people, hey, let's identify who we're going after and what we want to focus on. What are their pain points? Look at it from their point of view. How do we create a narrative around solving those pain points? And then from that point, though, how am I attracting those people? So like, what is your kind of feedback or roadmap to do that?
Sure. That's a great question. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to say, are you all in? Because they got to be all in. They got to commit. They can't be, I'm thinking about it or I'm whatever, right? Like that. That's like tire kickers. And you all in? Step one, we've had this conversation. Step two, you're all in. You sign up for the program. You get rocket. Step three, you come and you start doing the deep work of who are you? What is your expertise? Because we can't start right away going, okay, I want to change everything. No. Step into you. What is it about you that actually makes you special? What is it about your knowledge and expertise that you don't know because it's hidden from your view, but a lot of people know that is what makes you really, really good. Like, I'll give you an example. Okay. I got a friend of mine. I actually want to introduce him to you. I think he should come on your show. He's an accountant CFO type. Okay. His name's Larry Cooper. Okay. Larry's been a client of mine. Larry has been working as like some sort of fractional CFO for a company forever and ever and ever. But Larry did a talk for a group of CEOs that I put together for him. And man, this guy had charisma. He was articulate. And he showed people what their problems were, why they didn't know their numbers. And I said, yo, Larry, like, you're really good at showing CEOs how freaking clueless they are about their numbers. He goes, yeah, I really am. And you make it entertaining. You're not dry. You're not boring. And, I asked him a few questions. So like, what would happen if these guys didn't figure it out? Well, he outlined the consequences, from, tax implications to jail time to, all of that. And I'm like, okay, damn, Larry. So, you get all this, right? And the CEOs have this pain point. I said, what if you build yourself out as the guy who is going to help a CEO, an entrepreneur-led CEO firm, how to get a hold of his numbers so he doesn't go to jail. He didn't go to jail. I mean, jail's a big deal, right? Jail's a really, really big deal. Like, you're certain.
Well, not anymore. Not in the U.S. anymore. You just go in and you go out. But that's
okay.
All right.
Okay. I guess that's the case if you burn something down and you got Antifa or BLM.
Right. If you do this, the CEO would go to jail. I agree.
Yeah,
so
the CEO would go to jail, right?
Yes.
So like I said to Larry, you know what? Why don't you start putting yourself out there as a guy who's going to make sure that the dumb mistakes that they're making financially don't have massive consequences personally and professionally for them. And why don't you narrow it to a certain size of business, type of business, geography of business. So he started to do that. He started to work with some restaurants. and restaurants. So these were restaurant chains that were not national chains, obviously, because they have their own CFO and team to do that. But say under 20 restaurants, that was led by the founder, entrepreneur type of a person. Lair became the dude, and he put together a program. He worked directly with the CEO. He helped them put together all the systems and steps they needed to make sure that they were good. And he charged a nice buck for it. You know what I mean? Like a nice buck. So, you do that sort of thing as an example, then you got yourself a niche in terms of the type of clients you're going after. You got yourself a niche in terms of the problem you're solving for people. So he's not going in there and doing like tax audits for them, as an example, right? And he's able to charge a good buck because it's very specialized service. It's not generalist type service. Now, for all the generalist stuff that they knew, he would set them up. He'd say, okay, I got someone who does this for you. I got someone who does that for you. Now, I don't know if he took some sort of a
referral fee,
referral bonus for that or not, but I would have, if I were in his case. If you have a a group of trusted referral partners that you got, then those people should probably be part of your team, and there should be some sort of an arrangement that you have with them. Now, that's one example. If there's another fellow who's listening to this and he goes, well, I don't know who to go with. I've worked with so many people. We walk them through a process to figure out who's the right person. So there's three things that we say you've got to look at when you go to decide who's the person you want to work with, who's the type of company you want to work with. Well, first of all, who have you enjoyed working with, right? What type of person, what type of organization? You should write that down, and we'll help you figure that out. There's a bunch of criteria to do that. So that's step number one. And then secondly, who have you gotten really good results for? Like, who has just gotten outstanding results? And, that's pretty straightforward to deliver. And then finally, who has paid you the most? Who have you enjoyed working with from the point of view of the money they paid you? Like, no fuss, no muss. They pay full price. They refer people to you. And then you create, like a Venn diagram, right? Like, let me just do that for you right here, and I'll just show it to you. I'll just put enjoy, deliver, and dollars, right? And then this zone in the middle, right? You see that there, that Venn diagram.
Yeah, there's our overlap.
Deliver, dollars. So you're looking for people who fall in there. Ideally, now, if you can't find a ton of those people, you want it to be at least 2 of the 3 at the very minimum, right? So if you go into the group of people you've already worked with and you figure that out for yourself, you're in pretty good shape, right? You're in pretty good shape. We help people do exercises like this. We help them figure out what their real expertise is, and that can take a little bit of time, right? There's a series of modules and so forth that you got to go through in order to get that done. But you figure out who you want to work with, who has the problem you like solving the best, and you're good to go, man. We do this. We can help anybody, an accountant, a coach, any service-driven individual, I should say. I shouldn't say anybody. Go from wherever their income happens to be, and 2x, 5x, 10x. And the best result we ever got for somebody was 150x their income. That's pretty good.
Well, it depends where they started, but yes, that is pretty good. So
listen, even if you're making $1,000,
I'm messing with you.
You go from $1,000 a month to $150,000 a month. That's good.
I'm with you. So one thing that you mentioned that I think a lot of people don't think about is not just working with people that you like, getting a premium for it, but more importantly, your job's easier. So if you are an expert, that example, you're a guy who enjoys coaching CEOs. He's doing fractional CPA type work in the old days. Now he's packaged as, I'm assuming he's charging a monthly fee. That's something that's scalable. That is where you can add a lot more clients. But more importantly, you get very good at your job. So meaning when you go in to meet a new client, when you're a generalist, each new client, you have to research, you have to understand, whatever role they're asking you to be, it takes a little time. So it takes more time to learn that, to get that, and doing the role that you're talking about, making that transition. You already know the questions. You're driving the conversations to these CEOs. When you're starting with them, you already know these are the 3 ways. This is the way the process should work. This is what you should be concerned about. And from my point of view, and I think you would agree, instead of spending 60 hours, I'm spending 30. I'm making 3 times as much money. It's a much better deal. So I think that is something a lot of times people forget. So, all right, I bought in now. So I've done my circle. I found my overlap. I'm ready to go. I'm working with dental. Let's go for like a healthcare, but I'm going to go after cosmetic surgeons because for me, cosmetic surgeons is lucrative. They make a lot of money. They have to market a lot. They have a lot of budgeting. They have a lot of advertising. So let's say I'm ready to go in and be a fractional CFO type for cosmetic surgeons. How am I now building out my narrative? How am I creating content that is going to start attracting people versus just pure word of mouth? I know you mentioned if you have a current client who you've done really well with, you can get some case studies, you can create some social proof. You obviously can get some reviews and testimonials that really help. But explain to me now, how am I becoming the thought leader that is, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, there's 4 strategies for getting clients, okay? So the first one is the simplest one, and that really is to go into your own warm market, right? You know people, right? And you need to go to those people and you need to ask them if they're suffering from the pain points that you help solve. And there's so many people in our industry that just refuse to do that. But that is the first, fastest, best way to get clients. I make all of my clients do this. I don't let them get away with not doing this. Right? Because a lot of people, as I said, they have that fear. I don't want to come across as salesy. I don't want these people not to like me. Yes. If these people are hurting and they're people you know and you like and you don't help them, shame on you. Shame on you that you let somebody who doesn't care about them do the work for them instead of you. Okay. So first and foremost, warm network. Within warm network, there's a corollary, and that's asking for referrals and introductions. I wrote a book about this called The Power of Connecting: How to Activate Profitable Relationships by Serving Your Network. And I got to tell you, from going into my network and from asking for introductions or referrals, I've generated over $3.5 million in business.
Just by following. We just did my last podcast, actually this week, was how to use LinkedIn to create these conversations and use your warm connections and do a little research, kind of go through, here's some people that you're connected to, that client of yours is connected to, that you think is a good target, and actually starting with your client saying, hey, I think I could really help them. What do you think? What's their background? And then taking a warm introduction from that professional. So this is kind of what that's the LinkedIn approach to this, but that's basically what
I'm not saying LinkedIn. I'm saying pick up the phone.
Pick up the phone, right? And a lot of the conversations you pull out of LinkedIn.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people go on LinkedIn and they hide behind the message. No, call somebody. Reach out and touch someone if you want to think about the old AT&T ads from back in the day. All right. You need to speak to human beings and stop hiding behind messaging people. All right. People want to hear from you. People need to hear from you. So that's step number 1 is get on the phone, set up Zoom calls. That's your job. You have the ability out of your own network to pull out $100,000 in the next 90 days, bare minimum. And if you're not doing that, that's on you. That's on you because you're scared, because you're nervous about how you're going to look, because you're putting all the attention on you and none of the attention on where it belongs, and that's on your client. Your client is someone's daughter, someone's son, someone's husband, someone's wife, someone's brother, someone's sister. They're hurting in some way. I'm going to tell you another story, okay? I have a friend of mine who went on a call with somebody, and it was the last call of the day. He didn't want to do it, but it was on his calendar. So he said, all right, I'll do it, because he was tired. Last call of the week, actually. And he had the call, and, it was an hour long. And anyways, it went really well. And he enrolled this person into the program. And then, at the end of the call, he said, hey, listen, that was great. Is there anything else? Do you need anything else? And the guy was saying, no. Then he said, well, okay, well, since you asked, I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to tell you. He said, look, this call, I considered not taking this call, said the client who had signed up with him, like ready to go, because, but I'm a man of my word, and I believe in keeping my word, so I kept my word. But before you called, I had a revolver in my hand, and I was going to put it in my mouth, and I was going to blow my head off. And this call gave me hope. So I just wanted you to know that, and I want to thank you. And they both just cry. And my buddy had no idea. You don't know what people are dealing with. And when you put the attention on yourself, when you put the attention on your fear and I don't want to do this and I don't want to call, you're being a selfish little bitch.
Yeah, that's heavy. That's heavy. I was going to say, just not to.
I know it's heavy, but it's also truth.
Right.
Human being, this is business is about people, not numbers. I know this is an accounting show, but business is about human beings, and human beings connect. You and I are connecting on the phone. We passed some messages along, but Lee, those messages didn't let me get to know you, didn't let you get to know me. I get a sense of who you are, how intelligent you are, you know, what a kind human being you are, how much you care about people. How would I get that from a bunch of messages, brother? How's that even possible?
Right. No, I'm agreeing with you. So what we talked about on our LinkedIn podcast basically is to use LinkedIn to pull data. So LinkedIn is a huge database, all the connections, it's the network. Once you have that, the conversation should go offline. It should go then into phone calls, Zoom calls, whatever you're doing. And then you can start the whole process. Because again, even in buying decisions, those are emotional decisions as well. So most people are going to say, do I like this person or not? And then with accountants, I think this is important to say, accountants are the most trusted professionals for a reason. Clients believe they're putting their best interest in, versus an insurance salesperson, for example, who there's commissions, whatever's going on. If I'm working with my account, I trust them. So being able to connect with a human, one-to-one connection, I think actually really builds on the entire relationship. So they listen to your advice, refer more clients, et cetera. So I think we're moving along this conversation. I still want to get to more meat on, now I've decided what I'm doing. What am I doing? So you're giving me the way to meet clients, but am I creating anything? Am I using the internet? Am I using digital marketing to establish? Am I creating content to become a thought leader? Am I doing podcasts? Am I doing social media posts, snippets, whatever you call it? Are you suggesting utilizing those tools or not as much?
Well, I'm on social media because I think social media is a place to get exposure, right? It's like awareness advertising. But creating thought leadership is a process. There's a thing we teach people inside of our community on how to develop IP, right? And we go through a very rigorous process of showing you how to take what's in your head, get it out there, and then turn that into IP. But I talked about one of the 4 ways in which people can get clients. I want to talk about the other 3 ways because I think they're important too. Warm market and referrals, right? Podcasts and having a podcast, right? Being a guest on shows has brought clients to me. Having people listen to my shows brought clients to me. You with me? So that's very important. Thirdly, this isn't as effective as it used to be, but it's still pretty good. Having a book, like a book can be a very strong business card for you. And if it's written in a way that's directed at the people that have your pain point, and your book speaks to them and you get your book in the hands of those people, that can be very effective in getting you business. And then finally, talking about like internet marketing, cold traffic, you know what I mean? Paying for ads and that sort of thing. Those are the 4 kind of tactics and strategies that'll get you business. I'll be candid. I'm agnostic as to which one is your favorite one and which one you use. I don't say you have to use this one and don't use the other ones. I say use all 4 of them and see which works best for you. For me, podcasting has worked really, really well. My books worked really, really well. And referral marketing's worked really well. The cold traffic thing, so far, it hasn't. I got to be honest with you. I'd like it to work better for me because I think there's things that'll make possible for me that right now the other ways don't. But that's the sort of thing that I think anybody listening to this has got to say, these are the 4 ways in which I'm going to go after getting business. And you got to be willing to be bad at any or all of them before you can become good. You with me? But developing thought leadership, developing your IP, this little thing here, this is a little bit of my IP. You see this, right? This is how to pick a client, how to figure out what your niche ought to be, right? That's like, I just showed you the little visual diagram, but I got a whole kind of snapshot of IP around this topic and how to do this. So what I do inside of the programs I do is I teach people how to do that. I teach people how to get the statements of their expertise out of their heads, write it all down, and then once you've done that, I teach you how to create little visual diagrams to like outline it for people This can be the basis for a talking point on a podcast like this is right now. It can be the basis for a chapter in a book or 12 chapters in a book. If you got a dozen IP snapshots, that's a dozen chapters. You got yourself a book. If you've got a talk and you're doing 4 main points in your talk, 4 IP snapshots, that's the basis for your talk. If you got a coaching program and it's, 10 weeks long, 10 of these IP snapshots, boom, create all the information you need to create a powerful coaching diagram for you. So part of what I teach to people is you got to always be creating IP. So on a daily basis, I'm reading stuff like this is one of the books I'm reading right now by Ryan Holiday. This is a completely different book I'm reading right now. I also run a men's organization. So we're teaching some dudes some survival stuff, right? And I take notes on this stuff and I go, hey, let me think about something that I read there that I can use to build the depth of my IP. And as a thought leader, I think you should be listening to podcasts. You should be going on podcasts. Going on podcasts is a great way to test out your IP out there as well. So if you've been on 5 or 6 podcasts and you've tested out your IP and you're getting a good response from it, then that's the kind of IP you want to keep putting out there because that'll attract more people to come your way.
Yeah. So my 4 things is each market I think is going to be a little bit different. As far as like a digital side, creating content, creating a reputation and getting organic traffic. What's nice about that is, and it's all about creating IP anyway. So you're developing your IP, you're putting it online, you're starting people at different areas in the funnel, whether they're intent buyer, they're an awareness, they're unaware, whatever. But you're creating content that goes through the entire life cycle of a client. Their first glimpse of you is going to be completely coaching them and of your brand. And then from there, all your digital marketing assets, your reviews, your case studies, they start doing the selling for you. If you have created packages, if you have streamlined and taken the friction out of the buying process for a prospect, and this works best in the examples you have where I do fractional CFO work for CEOs or whatever they call that. But if I have created content specifically around that, these CEOs, let's say they referred to me, they're on my website, they're hearing my story, they're hearing my narrative. By the time I speak to them, by the time we have this Zoom call, they're already pre-sold. So it's a matter of then, and I wanted to pivot here now. So, okay, I've gone into being a thought leadership. I don't like to sell. I'm an accountant. I'm not a salesy type person. So explain to me, and we have our own process. We call a 15-minute discovery call. We teach our accountants what are the open-ended questions, how to control the narrative. A lot of times there are one-sided conversations where the client is speaking the entire time. The accountant can't control the narrative then. They can't walk through, identify what your pain points are. Are we a match or not? Right? If I'm not a match, I'll refer you out to somebody else. If we are a match, then how can I help you? Make it transparent in the way that the package, what I'm charging you, what you're going to get. So what is your advice for those that don't want to sound salesy? They've gotten someone now to that phone call, that discovery call. Kind of how do you help people get over the finish line?
Well, I think we talked about this earlier, right? The first thing is you got to take all the attention off of you and put all the attention on the client, right? Bit of rapport with the individual, but you don't want to overdo that either, right? Because if you overdo that, you go into being their friend rather than being the authority and the expert. So you got to keep that authority frame going. So that's number one. But secondly, put all the attention on them, ask questions, uncover their pain points, right? Don't let them go off on tangents. You know what I mean? Control the conversation, control the discussion, and your job. And I don't know, 15 minutes, man, that's aggressive, right?
We call it a 15-minute call. The reason we do that, it's not really 15 minutes. It is a lower risk for the prospect to, I'm only, okay, we're going to talk 15 minutes. And then, no, the cover, if you want to work with it, you're going to talk an hour. But go ahead.
For sure. So what I really spend the most time on after building rapport, right? And I got this from one of my mentors, a man named Mark Marmuser, is I just get into discovering what's going on, and asking those questions is the biggest thing I do. That's going to determine for me, is this a fit? Is this a match, as you put it, or is it not? And I also got to be skillful enough to help them see, do I have the pain? I have the pain. Is it really bad? It is really bad. Am I ready to solve it now? I am ready to solve it now. Do I trust this guy sitting in front of me to do this with me? I do trust them. That is your entire job in asking those questions. The problem with a lot of folks, be it accountants or other folks, other service-driven people, Lee, is they quit too soon. They want to be nice. They don't go deep enough on those pain points, man. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They want to solve it. They go, okay, I'm giving them.
They're trying to be polite. They don't want people to get too.
Yeah. And here's the problem. When you do that, that person doesn't realize they need the help yet. They're not there yet. So they're going to go, okay, I think I'm good. And they're not good. It's like if you're a doctor and a patient comes in and blood spurting out of their neck, and you go, well,
here's your Band-Aid.
Yeah, here's your Band-Aid. No, man, suture the damn thing, close it. That's what you got to do. That's your job. And if you're not doing that job, and that doctor frame's really, it's a good one to use, especially for accountants. Just say, look, imagine you're a doctor and this guy's bleeding to death. Are you going to let him bleed to death? No, you're not going to let him bleed to death. So that's what you got to do. Once you got that out of the way, then you got to decide, do I want to work with this person? If the answer is no, you end the call politely, but you end the call. If the answer is yes, then you go, look, I can help you. And you don't talk about your program. You talk about how you help them solve their problem. Not, hey, I got this great program. It's like the Ginsu knife. It'll slice, it'll dice. No. Oh, your books are a mess. Your numbers are a mess. Your last accountant told you, be careful, you're going to go to jail. I'm going to prevent that from happening. I'm going to put a system in place so you never have to worry about going to jail again. You want to solve this, or you want to take a chance on going to jail? That would be my question, right? And if they say, well, I'm not sure, I'm going, what's there not to be sure about? Jail, that's where you want to end up? Jail? Okay, no, I don't want to end up in jail. Great, you ready to solve it? You ready to not need to go to jail? Yes, I'm ready not to need to go to jail. Okay, great. Here's how we do it. Give me your credit card. Let's get going, or whatever the process is for you to accept payment, right? That's your job. You're not selling your program or your service. People talk about their damn program way too much. Talk about solving their problem, and then just bring in your program as the vehicle to do that. And when people start asking you questions about, well, tell me more about exactly how you do it. Let me ask you a question. If you're bleeding from your neck, do you want to have a conversation with your doctor about how they're going to suture that and make sure you stop bleeding? Or are you just going to say, stop the damn bleeding? They are not experts in your field. Why are they evaluating your process? And I would be very polite with the person on the other end, but I'd go, look, as an example, as an accountant, I'd say, hey, Lee, if we're looking to work together, I'm going to go, Lee, I get you're a real expert in what you do. You need to get I'm a real expert in what I do. And, my program works. You either trust me that my program works, or, you don't. And if you don't, we'll end the call right now. But if you trust me that I know what I'm doing, let me worry about that. You just be ready to be taking the coaching and following up. And there are some people who can't handle that. They just want to be in control too much. But I'll have a come to Jesus conversation. I'll say, what's that about, man? Is that just because you're a control freak? Okay. Here's the good news. That part of you that's a control freak's been good for you because it's allowed you to succeed, but it's also a double-edged sword that's probably not been good for you. It's what's messed you up. In our coaching relationship, that control freak has no say. We good? All right, that's it.
Well, then you move it forward. I think what's interesting too, just to add to that, is people can tell when people know what they're talking about, and when you're passionate about something, the confidence comes through. And I think when you're not, people can see through it a lot of times. And that's where I say you don't have to be a salesperson per se. You just need to be passionate about what you're talking about. You need to be emotionally vested in the success of your client. They're going to feel it. They're going to trust you. And that's when they do sign up. So I think we've covered a ton here today. I know that you do have some different ways that people, whether service professionals or accountants, can work with you. So kind of what is your program? Let's say that I bought in, I trust you, I've seen your passion, I think you would help me. What would be the next steps if someone wanted to talk further with you?
Look, the next step, honestly, would be to go to my website, which is eCircleacademy.com. There's a button in the top right-hand corner. It says book a success call. And they just click on that.
Longer than 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's 45 minutes. Just candidly, it's 45 minutes. So, and some of them go longer, and some of them are shorter, but I've never done one as short as 15 minutes. I got to be honest. So what we do is we ask them to go there, book a time, pick a time, and then fill out an application form. We just ask people to fill out an application because we want to make sure that whoever's going to be there on the call with us is a serious business person who's got a real issue they're dealing with, and they're serious about solving it, right? We don't want to deal with like dabblers and hobbyists. That's just not what we do. So we ask people to do that, and then they'll get a call with me because right now I'm calling for the foreseeable future. That's how it is. But I'll just tell you something before we do you mind if I tell one last quick story with you?
Sure.
There was a time where I did a program, a personal development program, and it was very impactful for me, right? And the person who was in charge of the Canadian arm of that personal development program and we became friendly. And she brought in a partner, and it didn't work out, and it ended up that she left the company after being there for 20 years. And so she was a little lost, and she ended up coming and doing our work with us. And after 18 months of floundering, she did really well. Her first month, she made $10,000 in profit. Second month, she made $12K. Third month, she made $18K. Her fourth month, though, she made $62,200. That figure will become germane in a moment. Anyways, it was really great. We were really proud of her, and she was a great success story. And she lives in the capital city of Canada called Ottawa. And she had a son, same age as my oldest son. My oldest son at the time was 12. He's 16 now, and he plays soccer, high-level soccer. He had a tournament in Ottawa, and we went to Ottawa for his tournament. And I called her up and I said, "Hey, we're in Ottawa, my son and I, and why don't you grab your little son? Let's meet for lunch on our way out of the city back to Toronto." So we did that. We had a lovely old time. And a few weeks later, we had one of our branded thought leader immersion workshops, right? We do those once a quarter. And this was the point where we did our upsell, right? To ask people to join our full year program. And so how I did it, how I still do it is I ask some of our existing members to say, "Hey, that's something you want to tell these people." And she said, "I do." And she jumped up on stage and she started to sob, Lee, like cry. And I'm looking at her, like any man seeing a woman cry, I panicked. I go, "Oh my God, what's wrong? What's going on? Why is she crying? What did I do?" Right? And she said to me, "Nicky, you didn't know this, but when you came to Ottawa to see me with your little son and my little son asked me, Mommy, who are we going to meet?" "So we're going to meet Nicky Billou and his son." And her son said to her, "Oh, are we going to get to meet the man who saved our family?"
Wow. Yeah.
And Lee, I'm an old school alpha male Persian man. I don't cry in public. You know what I'm saying?
All right.
Bawled like a little baby. We both hugged on stage, and there were 8 people sitting in the room that were new people at the time. And we have a high ticket upsell, right? Like if I just say the figure out loud, most people go, "Oh my God, that's a lot of money," right? Everybody bought. I didn't do any pitching after that. We handed out the registration forms and they all signed up. And there were 2 men in the room who had both adamantly come to me before because they said, "Look, I know you're going to be doing a pitch. I know you're going to be doing a pitch. I know you're doing an upsell, and I'm not buying. I want you to know I'm not buying. I'm not buying. I'm not buying." Like they were just like in my face about it, right? I'm like, "Dude, man, I got it. You're not buying.
All right, you're not buying.
You're not buying. It's all good. No problem." Son bitch was the first guy to buy. First guy to buy. He walked up to me, Lee, and I get choked up every time I tell the story. And he looked at me and he said, "I wasn't going to buy." He said, "But here's the truth. You seem like you're a good man and you're not full of shit. And I do need the help." So he was the first guy to sign up. So
I love it.
Here was the wildest part. He went to every table with the other guys to help them fill out their forms after. It was hilarious.
There we go. Now you had your social proof right on down.
Yeah,
I love it. That's an awesome
good.
story. I appreciate everything you've shared with our audience today. Your passion, obviously you're into it. And my point of view on this is what we tell our clients. All you're doing is kind of reinforcing another point of view about taking the risk, putting yourself out there, making a better life. And I don't get as far into that side of the pitch. I'm more straight and narrow with it. But the reality is, if you make these decisions, You're not going to have another tax season like you just had. You're not going to be sitting there grinding away, coming home just exhausted, again, unhealthy, family unhappy with you, not making what you want. These are the kind of things, the decisions that you need to make. And it's tough because, you are comfortable, but the reality is there is a better way. And I think we've just kind of espoused on it over the last 45, 50 minutes. So I really appreciate, Nicky, you coming, spending time with me and sharing your knowledge and your passion. I love your stories. It's been a great experience so far for me as well. So I don't know if you have any last closing. I don't know. I'm giving you an opportunity. Don't go crazy with any last closing comments.
So first of all, thanks for having me on the show. It's a real honor to be on the show, man. Lee, you're a great host. You ask great questions. You really keep the flow going really well. So I just want to give you a shout out. The people listening to your show, they're lucky they got a man like you delivering such a high quality show. Secondly, honestly, the last thing I want to say to people is you deserve to live life as the best version of yourself. And if you're not, and you're suffering over it, you deserve to stop suffering over it. So do something to change that. This is your year. You do not need to suffer. I know the world's gone a little bit crazy with the lockdowns and inflation, all that BS that's going on around in the world. And, you're only going to suffer if you suffer in silence and alone. So don't do it alone. Go be a part of Lee's program, or if what we're saying makes sense to you, come talk to us, but do something and move forward in your life. Don't stay stuck.
Yeah, I haven't even pitched at all about what we do. So hopefully you already know, but yeah, CountingWorks Pro is basically, we are a marketing automation platform for tax and accounting professionals. We do a lot of this positioning, helping you identify the group you want to target and identifying how you create this thought leadership IP that we've been talking about today. We do this for our clients in a low cost subscription basis, and then we add a layer of coaching levels to it. We have an expert staff that knows how to create content, how to create thought leadership content, and more importantly, we have the syndication channels to get that content out there. That's where you can create a scalable business that can grow very quickly. It's kind of like word of mouth on steroids is kind of the way I look at it. So definitely give us a call, visit our website at CountyWorksPro.com. I do this podcast quite frequently. We're trying to get going weekly, but also you can follow me on LinkedIn and share some of my posts and read some of the things that we're talking about. But again, Nicky, thank you very much for your time. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Lee.